Hello, and welcome to my list of the top 10 worst playoff games in NFL history. With the playoffs starting just around the corner, I thought it'd be nice to go back and take a look at the worst of the worst from the NFL's past. All the blowouts, the lackluster affairs, everything. Though I do want to mention that for my own sake of time and sanity, that this video will be kept to only the Super Bowl era, because I really do not want to go all the way back to the first ever playoff games. But if this video does well, maybe I will make a sequel and delve into that arena. But with that being said, our list begins with some honorable mentions. Our first honorable mention goes to Super Bowl V. The Baltimore Colts beat the Dallas Cowboys 16-13. A turnover-filled game with 11 turnovers between both teams. Cowboys linebacker Chuck Howley becomes the only player in NFL history to win the Super Bowl MVP while being on the losing team. Our second honorable mention goes to the 2006 NFC wildcard game. The Carolina Panthers beat the New York Giants 23-0. The New York Giants win the division but get shut out at home in the playoffs. What a fitting story. The Giants turn the ball over 5 times in a complete and utter meltdown in front of their own fans. Third and final honorable mention goes to Super Bowl 48. The Seattle Seahawks beat the Denver Broncos 43-8. With the first play of the game resulting in a safety, it should have been clear that even with the greatest offense of all time, led by one of the greatest players of all time, these Broncos were no match for the Legion of Boom. With our honorable mentions out of the way, we begin our list with number 10, the 2007 AFC Divisional Game. The Indianapolis Colts beat the Baltimore Ravens 15-6. In a crazy field goal fest, two great quarterbacks in Peyton Manning and Steve McNair combined to average 170 yards apiece and threw 2 picks as well. The rushing attack for both teams wasn't much better, with neither team having a rusher top 60 yards. The Colts, however, would go on and best the Bears in Super Bowl later in these playoffs. Coming in at number 9, we have the 1976 NFC Championship game. The Dallas Cowboys beat the Los Angeles Rams 37-7. The Rams come to this matchup favored by 7 points because of their stellar defense, holding teams to a league-leading 9.6 points per game. The Cowboys, however, would go on to dismantle the Rams both offensively and defensively. The Cowboys held the Rams to a pathetic 22 yards rushing on 16 carries, while they themselves ran rampant with 195 yards rushing on 50 attempts. Roger Staubach throws for a phenomenal 220 yards on 16 of 26, with 4 touchdowns and 1 pick. Rams Hall of Famers Merlin Olsen and Jack Youngblood were both held in check and held sackless, while the Cowboys' defense got to Rams' Ron Jaworski 5 times. Now at number 8, we have the 1989 NFC Championship game. The San Francisco 49ers beat the Chicago Bears 28-3. The Bears couldn't stop the great Bill Walsh West Coast offense led by Hall of Famers Joe Montana and Jerry Rice, with the latter throwing for 288 yards on 17 of 27 passing with 3 touchdowns. Rice himself hauled in 5 catches for 133 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Bears' Jim McMahon threw for 121 yards on 14 of 29 with 1 pick. Not bad, but hard to outdo Joe Cool. Now at number 7, we have another 49ers game. Super Bowl 24, the San Francisco 49ers beat the Denver Broncos 55-10. In a duel of future Hall of Famers, Joe Montana showed why he deserved the MVP that year with a stellar stat line of 297 yards passing and 5 touchdowns on 22 of 29. John Elway countered with a dismal 10 of 26 for 108 yards and 2 picks. Rushing was an afterthought for both of these teams, with the leading rushers being Roger Craig and Bobby Humphrey gaining 69 and 61 yards respectively. Jerry Rice hauls in 7 catches for 148 yards and 3 touchdowns to lead the receiving attack. All in all, just an absolute drubbing of a Super Bowl game. Now at number 6, we have the 1980 NFC Championship game. The Los Angeles Rams beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 9-0. In a field goal frenzy, the Rams beat the Bucs in every offensive aspect. The Rams have 23 first downs to the Bucs' 7. Their running back tandem of Cullen Bryant and Wendell Tyler rushed for 160 yards and 86 yards respectively, with Vince Ferragamo throwing for 163 yards on 12 of 23 passing. The Bucs used 2 quarterbacks during this game, including future Super Bowl MVP Doug Williams and Mike Ray, in what would be the latter's last game in the NFL. Most of the Bucs' passing yards come off a halfback throw from Jerry Eckwood. Cracking our top 5, we start with the 1983 AFC Championship game. The Miami Dolphins beat the New York Jets 14-0. In a game with 9 turnovers between both teams display sloppy play with Jets' Richard Todd throwing 5 picks, one going all the way back for a pick 6. along with being sacked 4 times and throwing a mere 103 yards through the air. The Dolphins weren't much better with similar offensive output, but in favor of handing the ball away instead of throwing it away. They end up with 3 fumbles and 1 pick. All around, a sloppy game. With number 4, the 2001 NFC Championship game, the New York Giants beat the Minnesota Vikings 41-0. The Giants pummeled the Vikings, more than septupling their net offensive output with 380 yards to the Vikings' 60. The Vikings were utterly dismantled, which would have happened to the Giants just a couple weeks later in their 34-7 loss to the Ravens in the Super Bowl. Kerry Collins of the Giants throws for an eye-watering 381 yards and 4 touchdowns, while Tiki Barber led the rushing attack with 69 yards. Nice. The Vikings turned over the ball 5 times in just an absolute abysmal showing. Cracking our podium, we start with number 3, the 1990 AFC Championship game. The Buffalo Bills beat the Los Angeles Raiders 51-3. Buffalo steamrolls the Raiders on their way to their first of 4 Super Bowl appearances. The Bills rushed out to a 41-3 lead going into half, with Jim Kelly throwing for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns and a pick. The rushing attack led by Thurman Thomas bulldozed through the Raiders for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jay Schroeder of the Raiders threw for 150 yards and 5 picks, while Greg Bell and Hall of Famer Marcus Allen combined for 62 yards between the two of them on the ground. Just below our top spot at number 2, we have the 2000 AFC Championship game. Jacksonville Jaguars beat the Miami Dolphins 62-7. In a depressing end to the Dan Marino era in Miami, the Dolphins get eviscerated by the Jags in a rough outing for the future Hall of Famer. He throws for a measly 95 yards with a touchdown and 2 picks. However, not to be outdone, the Dolphins' rushing effort puts it up at a horrid 21 yards rushing. The Jags QBs of Jay Fielder and Mark Brunell combined to throw 2 touchdowns apiece and 277 yards between the two of them. The 3-headed rushing attack of Fred Taylor, James Stewart, and Chris Howard gave each man a touchdown apiece, with Taylor's coming on a 90-yard touchdown run. Miami fumbled the ball 5 times during the game to exacerbate their woes. And now what we've all been waiting for, the top spot. Number 1, the 1970 NFC Divisional game. The Dallas Cowboys beat the Detroit Lions 5-0. And no, this is not baseball. The Lions QBs of Greg Landry and Bill Munson combined to throw for a minuscule 92 yards and a pick, while their team has an even worse 76 yards on the ground. Meanwhile, the Dallas air attack was even worse, with Craig Morton throwing for an abysmal 4 of 18 and 38 yards and a pick. However, they outgained the Lions on the ground with 206 yards, led by Dwayne Thomas notching 30 carries with 135 yards, with his backfield mate Walt Garrison also picking up 72 yards on 17 carries. In the end, my list is subjective, and that's the end of the list. Thank you for sticking around till the end, and if you liked the video, like and subscribe. I mean, I can't force you to, but it'd be really greatly appreciated if you did. Thank you again. Have a great day.